Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a continuation of the reference video idea that I started with my 9,000 subscriber fragrance celebration video that I did. You can go back and check out that video if you kind of like the idea. My thought process, and this was actually recommended to me by a subscriber. They said, Ramsey, you do all these videos where you go so deep talking about 50, 100 fragrances that has a specific note. What if you pick some of your favorites from a particular category and highlight them in one video? And I thought, great idea. And so it takes a while to put all this stuff together and pull everything out. So I hope you guys appreciate the video. I know you guys like the old school, old style Ramsey video where we just talk about a lot of fragrances at once in a compact time period, like an hour or so. And so that's exactly what this is going to be. The rules are, I'm trying not to repeat any fragrances. So as an example, today we're going to talk about Carnation. I really would have loved to put Bel Ami in the Carnation category in this reference video, but I already included Bel Ami in leather, so I'm not including it in the Carnation territory or category. So this is going to be, I believe it's 18 again. I think we did 18 ingredients on the first one. You can go watch that video. It's been viewed a lot and liked a lot by a lot of you guys, and this is going to be kind of a continuation of that, different categories of or different ingredients, if you will, that we haven't discussed. So let's get started because there's a lot to discuss. So first of all, I do want to do scent of the day, and this easily could come up in one of the categories we are going to discuss today, but I'm just going to show it off as a scent of the day. It's called Roja's Oh, the Exclusive Parfum. So if you're into kind of hunting down rare and discontinued or harder to find fragrances, this is one that's discontinued. This was actually sent to me by one of you, and I reviewed it on the channel. You can check it out. It's compared to the Moon, and I think it very well may have inspired the Moon. I think the Moon is better, to be honest with you, because it has that raspberry oud thing going on, but it has a lot of Cypriol in it, and that's one of the ingredients we will be discussing today. But that was my scent of the day to work. And I actually like these Western style oud fragrances, if you will. If you know my taste, you know I actually do really enjoy wearing these type of fragrances. Worked great for work. You know, it has that that sort of luxury blob smell that the Scented Devil coined, and I've been giving him credit every time I use it, but it's a perfect way to describe it because it does have that expensive-like feeling. But they did discontinue it, and I think they decided they were going to discontinue it because of H, the exclusive parfum, which I reviewed both on the channel. You can check those out. Okay, so let's get started. The first ingredient we're going to discuss today is cardamom, and I actually did a ranked, this is not a top 10 cardamom, so if you really want to go deep, that video was like 2 hours, or even maybe, I forget how long, but it was long. So if you really want to go deep, you can easily go into the cardamom there. But the thing about cardamom is that it is one of my favorite spices because it can feel kind of both warming and cooling at the same time. And it also depends on the variety of cardamom. Black cardamom can be much more earthy and smokier, and the green cardamom can come across as almost like fresher, mintier. But I love the way it adds this little bit of a zing to the spicy opening. Also being Arabic, cardamom mixed with tea or mixed with coffee has been like a staple in my household growing up. So I've smelled it a lot, and I really enjoy the fresher, spicier aspects of cardamom and the way it blends with the different ingredients. So it can add a very aromatic aspect to the ingredient smell. Now, we're going to start with a fragrance that some of you may laugh at, because having this in a reference ingredient list, not where some people may think. Other channels may put this in the reference oud. If you go watch my reference oud from last video of this that I did, there was a lot of things like the Areej Dores and stuff like that, and Ensars. But this, for me, is a reference cardamom fragrance. It is Tom Ford's Oud Wood, the original from 2007. One of the reasons I really like this is because it has two notes that I really, really love, and they combine them beautifully. Rosewood and cardamom. And rosewood can be sometimes rosy smelling, rosy and woody. And my mom had this, when I was a kid, this rosary that was made out of rosewood. And so the smell is like ingrained in my head, and I really love the way the rosewood and the cardamom comes together. This is not an oud fragrance for me. This is just a woody sort of, you know, I love the cardamom in here. It is a great use of the cardamom by Richard Herpen, who is the perfumer. Definitely his most popular work. And then anything from Bortnikoff. I'll tell you what, there are some houses that just do like a specific note so well, and Dmitry Bortnikoff is one of those houses that I would say you could kind of go to. I did not use this fragrance in, and you could have grabbed so many of his. I reviewed things like Bonaire, or you can go watch. I have a playlist for every house that I review. Not every house, but most houses that I've reviewed that have multiple reviews on the channel. I have a playlist. So you can go find my Bortnikoff playlist and watch all of the videos. But that is a house that I really think that sort of almost copyright Cardamom, that the way Dmitry Bortnikoff uses it is pretty special. And I just grabbed Oud Maximus, but like I said, you could have grabbed a lot of other ones. This did not make my favorite ouds, but again, it easily could have. There's a lot of overlap in this kind of video idea, but this is a beautiful rose oud. There's also some jasmine and some orange in here, but the cardamom in the top, along with the rose oud combination, multiple types of roses, multiple types of oud, a little bit animalic, some deer musk, just beautiful stuff. It is really, really well done. And so this is a reference cardamom fragrance for me. As you can see, I like my cardamom with oud, and but I did grab one that didn't have oud, but it does have Cypriol, which adds this earthy element. And so we'll talk a little bit about Cypriol later on when we continue on our journey, and it actually is Journeyman. So Amouage Journeyman is the third and final on the reference cardamom list. If you want to smell an amazing, well, this could also be a reference Sichuan pepper, but this peppery cardamom opening, Sichuan pepper makes it smell almost like fiery. You know what I mean? Like you put the pepper in like this wok, you're making dinner or something, and when you put the pepper in, the flames just kind of shoot, and you blend that with the smell of the cardamom. It is absolutely amazing. I really love Journeyman, and I have a full review on the channel, so if you want to check that out, you can. Okay, next on the list, we are going to discuss the note of Carnation, okay? And Carnation is one of my personal favorite florals because I love the way that it mixes so well with vintage, especially masculine perfumery. It blends beautifully with leathers and oak moss and stuff like that. And Carnation has this subtle spice to it, you know, like it's supposed to apparently have a high concentration of eugenol, but I actually have some Carnation Absolute, and it smells very green and almost like you took, you know, bits and pieces of the Carnation along with the flower, like the leaves and the stems, and like blended it together. Okay, so it does give off this clove vibe to some people, but to me it's very subtle, and but it blends beautifully with the type of notes in vintage masculine perfumery that I love. And I did not include Bel Ami, but if you have a bottle of Bel Ami, especially one of the vintage bottles, that is a beautiful representation of how cardamom can be used with things like woods and leathers and stuff like that. But I grabbed a couple other beautiful carnations here. So the first reference carnation for me is going to be Antiquity, and you can see I have a review of this on the channel. Antiquity is one of my favorite Areej Dore creations. Again, some of these are going to be hard to come by. There is a collector side of this hobby, so don't feel like you have to run out and go buy everything. This is, yeah, it's a process. A collection can take a lifetime to build. So if you're somebody who's newer to the hobby, you know, and you're just kind of finding out about some of these fragrances, please don't go spend $1,000 or something like that on this on the secondary market. I mean, I know that's kind of what they're going for, but don't do it. It's not worth it. You can build your collection other ways, and you know, you can kind of come across these unicorn pieces here and there occasionally when you just stumble across them at a good price. Patience is a virtue building a collection. So it's very leathery, it's very animalic, but it has that beautiful spiced carnation. Oh, and mixing with the oud and that old school aldehydic feel. I said in my review from memory that this was like riding on a train back in time. And if Jacques Guerlain or Amy Guerlain was alive today and making fragrances using real oud, this is how I would imagine it smells like. It is absolutely stunning. It is such a beauty, and one of my favorite One of my favorite Areej Dore is that Russian leather note with the Carnation. Carnation just mixes beautifully with leather for some reason, and so Antiquity is a reference Carnation for me. The other is probably going to be much easier for you to find, although it is also discontinued. But what Guerlain did, speaking of Guerlain, is they released this fragrance in 2017. Delphine Jelk is listed as the perfumer, and it used to come like this, and this was called Louis. Now, interestingly enough, Louis, the bottle and the name are based on an older Guerlain from way back when. Guerlain loves doing that. And so you can see Carnation gives me like really vintage vibes from the fragrances I'm showing and discussing. So when Guerlain kind of changed from this bottle into their new L'Art and La Matière bottles, which look like this. Okay, they look like this. That's what the new ones look like. They actually changed the name of Louis and put it in the new bottle, okay? And the new bottle is called Huile Pourpre. It's as close as I can get. French speakers, I apologize, but Huile Pourpre. And it's in these bottles, but then they discontinued it. So they moved it to the new collection and then discontinued it. And some of them they actually discontinued before they put out these new bottles. But anyways, I just bring that up to say this may be a little bit easier to find, but sometimes you can find these 50 ml because the new one are 100 ml. So the new bottles will probably be even more expensive, but this is a reference Carnation. I mean, and you know what? It's Carnation and benzoin and vanillas with that Guerlain style vanilla. Very, very classy. You know, if you like the way that Guerlain kind of did floral vanillas, like Metallica, for example, if you like fragrances like Metallica, which I would love a bottle one day. I actually bought a bottle of Metallica. The person never sent it, and so my money got refunded. That was probably a year ago, maybe even more. So I've been hunting Metallica forever. But if you like that type of Guerlain perfumery, a little bit of sweetness from the vanilla, spiciness here from the Carnation, and that benzoin, which just acts like a blanket. You know, it's so comforting. This is a beautiful creation by Delphine Jelk. She really understood the assignment. I mean, I really think that she understands Guerlain's aesthetic. Although I wish they would take some more chances, but I really like Louis. Okay, so that's some reference Carnations. Now we're going to do a reference Chypre category. Chypre is one of my favorite categories. I've done multiple Chypre videos on the channel. You can go check them out. I did some that were unranked. I did some that were ranked. I did leather Chypres. I mean, I separated everything out, and there's multiple videos for you to check out on Chypres. But it's basically a perfume family, if you will, that is made up of citruses in the top, usually bergamot, labdanum, and oak moss. Mosses in the base. Sometimes there's patchouli. Usually there's patchouli and stuff like that. But so it's supposed to be the most mysterious fragrance category because of the mosses and you know, the mystery involved. Aphrodite slept on a bed of mosses. There's a whole backstory to it. And some say that the Chypre category actually doesn't just date back to the 1800s, but some say it dates all the way back to Roman times. And Chypre represents the island of Cyprus, where they actually found the oldest perfumery lab. All of it's kind of connected. It's all very interesting. But I grabbed 3, and of course, it's very. These were maybe at least the first. Well, the oldest one I'm going to show you. Let's say the first 2 bottles I'm going to show you is the easiest thing I've grabbed in all of this list, because this is literally a reference Chypre. Some say maybe the greatest perfume ever created, but this is Guerlain's Mitsuko. Just an absolutely mind-blowingly beautiful, stunning, floral, fruity Chypre. And like I said, Chypres can be in all different categories, so I'm not including the leather Chypres here, although I did an entire video on leather Chypres. If you really want to check those out, you can watch that. You can go find that video. Probably easy to find if you just search "this is not a top 10 leather Chypre." It'll probably pop up. But this has one of the most perfect peach notes you can imagine. And I don't have a bottle of Coty's Chypre, or that would easily be on this list. I have smelled it, and I think I still may have a couple precious drops where I can do a review. But Coty Chypre inspired Guerlain's Mitsuko, and you know, Coty and Jacques Guerlain kind of had this rivalry, if you will, that pushed them forward. If you can find some of these older bottles, this is a 1970s bottle of the Parfum de Toilette, which this version's discontinued. This is a extrait. They call this the rosebud bottle because it literally looks like a rosebud, the cap. But this is some of the best fragrance I've ever smelled in my life. I mean, it is, my God, man. It's so stunningly beautiful to wear. The spices, the citrusy fruitiness comes through, and of course that peach, which is so succulent and sexy at the same time. The cinnamon, the oak moss, there's some vetiver. The older bottles, I think, probably use real ambergris and stuff like that. There's probably a substitute now. There's a lilac note in here, but it's just one of the best fragrances ever created. And so what I did is I grabbed Mitsuko, which was a no-brainer, and then one of my favorite, not just favorite Chypres, but favorite niche fragrances of all time is based on Mitsuko. I think it's also based on a couple things. You could point to something like Bandit by Robert Piguet, which that's a leather Chypre. So actually this, I guess you could consider this a leather Chypre because it is, but it has so much more going on as well. This is Diaghilev, which sad that's all I have left, but Diaghilev is one of my favorite creations ever. I love the way everything blends together. It's got tarragon in the top. It's a little bit more of that anisic-like vibe than Mitsuko, and it's much more sexualized. You know, it's got this dirty cumin. It's got the almost like sweaty skin accord, and these animalics are kind of amped up a little bit. Roja calls it a Baroque Chypre, so it's big Baroque. Diaghilev is, I think, his greatest creation, personally. And now, this type of perfumery for the House of Roja is dead. He's not making stuff like this anymore, unfortunately. I think he's shifted and gone towards much more commercialized products, but, you know, it is what it is. And then I've been trying to include some more modern versions of you know, these categories for you guys to try to hunt down. If finding, you know, $1,000 bottle of Diaghilev or vintage bottles of Mitsuko are going to be hard, this is one you can just go buy right off of the website. And even the new juice is still good from what I hear. Although, you know, I was always under the impression that this house was all about being against the grain and not being IFRA compliant. He came out and said, no, actually I am IFRA compliant. I just didn't know it. And it was just kind of weird because the whole idea I thought was rogue perfumery was about being a rogue and going against the grain. But I think he maybe saw where the money was and selling to the European Union and all that good stuff. But apparently the new bottles are still good. I haven't smelled them. I've only smelled the older bottle that I have, but it's called Chypre Siam. And this is what real oak moss absolute does to a fragrance. Look at the color. Look at that green, dark green, almost black, you know. See through here, but you get up on it and it looks black, you know. That's what real oak moss absolute does. And this is probably the closest modern thing you can get to Coty's Chypre, to the original Chypre that Coty created. It is slightly floral because it has some jasmine, some ylang-ylang, and it's got this kaffir lime note, which is very unique. You know, you think about like Indian foods and stuff like that. But it's got basil, slightly herbal, slightly green, a little bit of leather, a little bit of spice and sandalwood, and it's just, the whole ride is just beautiful. Chypre Siam, and you know what's funny, as I was looking through trying to show you guys a modern kind of version of some of these categories that I've selected, this house comes up over, and I didn't even do it on purpose, it just happened naturally. This comes up over and over and over again. I really rate Manny Cross's work. I need to get to reviewing more of these. I only reviewed one, which I don't even own a bottle of. So I really need to get on reviewing some of these. But Chypre Siam, I think this is one of the best modern Chypres that you can just buy if you want kind of a feel of a vintage style Chypre. Very, very well done. Very impressive work by Manny Cross. Okay, next on the list, we're going to talk about coffee. Now, coffee is, it's going to be interesting because to me, my two favorite coffee fragrances that I'm going to tell you about right out the gate, my two reference of the reference coffees, I don't own full bottles of. I can't, well, one of them I could buy, but I can't buy any fragrances right now. The other one is impossible to find. And you'll be able to see instantly I like my coffees with oud. There's no doubt about it. I like my coffee, maybe because Arabic coffee, Arabic style fragrances, I don't know. But either way, you know, coffee fragrances, I think, bring up a lot of emotions in people. They don't just think about the coffee smell. They also think about going to the coffee shop with their friends and the smell of their dad brewing coffee when they were a kid and all this stuff. And so some of the coffee fragrances we're going to discuss. And again, I've got reviews on the first three we're going to talk about, okay? So the first one is Oud Luwak by Areej Dore. I don't have it. That is my holy grail coffee fragrance. I've reviewed it, though, off of a decant, which is somewhere, God knows where, but it's here somewhere. It's coffee, Sumatra oud, spikenard, carrot seed, nutmeg, Indian oud, Sumatra benzoin, cedarwood, and Java vetiver absolute. And I believe that it came out in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was 2018, but it's really supposed to capture the complexity of the oud and the coffee note. You know, it's very rich, very, has that, you know, baked aroma of the beans in it, very thick and smoky and regal. I loved Oud Luwak, loved it. And, you know, if you've smelled things like Oud Zen, which we'll talk about later on in the video, or if you smelled Russian oud, which I talked about in the last video as an example of an oud fragrance, of a reference oud fragrance. But if you smelled the way that he does kind of the resins in there, it's in Oud Luwak. You get kind of this very thick, rich, like it feels like you're smelling labdanums and the sticky resins underneath, and I really, really like that. Very authentic, beautiful coffee. The coffee here was a Kopi Luwak. That's where the name Oud Luwak comes from. The Kopi Luwak, which is basically civet cat coffee, where they literally have the civet cat eat the coffee beans and poop them out, and then they take it from the poop and brew those, because they say the civet cat's digestive tract adds flavor to it. And this is true. I'm not pulling your leg, for those of you who don't know the story. And it's an expensive way to drink coffee too. I think I was reading that, you know, you could pay over $100 for a cup of that stuff. So it's supposed to add a little bit of that funk to it. Obviously, it went through the civet cat, but you can look it up. Look up Kopi Luwak. But Oud Luwak is my grail coffee fragrance. I would love one day. Just like Malik Al Taif, which made last time the video I did, the first reference video, the Rose Grail. Both of those are right there for me. And I've still never smelled Koei Noir, which came from the same sort of collection, the fourth collection. That was a very good collection. The other one, which I reviewed, which competes with Areej Dore to me, is Ensar. Ensar did a fragrance called Rumi, named after the great Turkish Afghanistani poet, one of the greatest, most well-known poets of all time. He did the quote, set your world on fire, find someone who fans your flames, which I talked about when I did my Fan Your Flames by Nishane review. That was based on a Rumi quote. But Ensar's fragrance is literally called Rumi. And it's probably one of the most realistic coffees I've ever smelled, ever. Like, if you want a very true to form realistic coffee, check out Rumi. It's done in kind of the Turkish style, a little bit spicy, a little bit floral, with some elderflower and Persian rose because of the Persian connection, and Turkish rose because of the Turkish connection to Rumi, the whole Ottoman Empire connection thing. And it's got that Ensar sort of ambergris sparkle to it. I really, really enjoyed Rumi. You can go watch my review. But I think if you gave me a choice between Oud Luwak or Rumi, it would be Oud Luwak. So a couple coffee fragrances I actually have. And this, again, could easily have been in my favorite ouds as well. And like I said, I like my oud in coffee, but this is Lao Oud. Lao Oud is Bortnikoff's most animalic oud. It's become my favorite Bortnikoff, I think, over time. Very spicy, very animalic, and it's got a magnolia flower in the top. He loves using these kind of off the beaten path flowers: magnolia, pink pepper, cacao absolute, Peru balsam, beeswax absolute, chamomile, cinnamon, and in the base with the oud, the Indian oud, which is the kind of the funky fermented oud, and Laotian oud, is this coffee. And it is beautiful. I really am enjoying coffee and oud fragrances lately. And this is an absolute gem. Very, very glad to have this in the collection. And then we've got a couple other designers. I wanted to include some others that weren't just oud and coffee. So the first one I'm going to show you is a fragrance I reviewed on the channel as a discontinued gem fragrance. It was called Cristobal Parfum. This is created by Gerard Anthony, one of my all-time favorite perfumers. This is white pepper, coffee, mugwort, and tea. So you get tea and coffee combination. And you know, it feels like, you've ever smelled Givenchy pie, the way the benzoin just feels like you're being wrapped, comforting feel. You know, it's got a little bit of sweetness in here, but well done. I like the way they did sweetness back in the day, with some sandalwood, coriander, nutmeg, geranium, amber, benzoin, tobacco, and vanilla. So it does have tobacco, coffee, and tea, which is kind of the trifecta. But this is just a beautiful creation. Definitely the most designer smelling of Gerard Anthony's work. But I really, really like that. Glad to have it. It is discontinued. Unfortunately, the other coffee fragrance I'm going to show you is discontinued too. But this is much more like a bitter Italian espresso in the morning with a cigarette. It is Trussardi Inside Man. It is also tobacco with coffee beans. And if you can imagine maybe like the darker Robusta coffee, you know, that makes espresso. Think of like an Italian espresso in the morning. It's really beautiful. There's a teak wood note in here. It is designer smelling. It's a designer, you know, Trussardi, but it's a Nathalie Lorson, and I really think Nathalie Lorson is one of the most underrated perfumers. She's done more with less than anyone I can think of. I would love to see her given the head, you know, perfumer job at Dore or something like that over Francis Kirkjohn, me personally. Okay. Next on the list, we are going to talk about the note of Cypriol. Now, Cypriol is very woody, earthy, and smoky. Many niche houses use Cypriol nowadays, like Roja. Like, for example, go watch my review of Roja's Taif Oud, which he sells for like $800 or something ridiculous. And Taif, I think it was called Taif Oud. It may have been Taif Rose, or I can't remember what he called it. But that was you'll see it if you just search for if you search Roja Taif Ramsey, you'll probably pull it up. But huge hit of Cypriol in the opening there, and it has a very distinctive olfactory smell. Many of the oud accords that you smell are made up of things like norlimbinol and black oud and Cypriol, because it's much cheaper than, of course, the real thing. So there's a couple Cypriol fragrances I really, really like. Journeyman could have been on the list of Cypriol, but I stuck it with Cardamom. It also could have been Sichuan pepper if I ever do a reference Sichuan pepper video. But the first one we're going to start with is Promise. And I've reviewed Promise on the channel within the last couple months. You can go check out my review. I love this stuff. It's maybe one of the most beast mode fragrances in my collection. Like, I know everyone in the frag-com screams from the top of the building about beast mode this and beast mode that. I've smelled thousands of fragrances. I have almost never smelled a fragrance with such tenacity. Literally, I wore this one day, tucked my undershirt into my jeans at the time. The back of my hand must have rubbed against the inside part of my jeans. I had to wear those jeans when I wear Promise, because for months I could smell it if I just even picked up the jeans and held it close to my nose, I could smell it even after washing it. This stuff is one of the most tenacious, but it does have a beautiful apple note in the top. Very well done, Middle Eastern style apple, rose, and clove and Cypriol with a ton of ambroxan, because it just throws. I mean, everyone will smell you. If you're one of the guys that wants the attention, you want everyone to smell you, you can't do much better than Promise. And it's the cheapest from the Desert Gem. There's a new one called Hope, which I can't wait to smell. But yeah, so that's probably, I'm really looking forward to Hope. But then again, I haven't smelled Heaven Can Wait. There's still some Frederic Malls I have yet to smell. So, but yes, Promise is a reference Cypriol for me. Another reference Cypriol is Silver Oud by Amouage, which I should have also bought Royal Tobacco when I was on my my binge buying of trying to find these discounted. I think they were both at discounters for very respectable prices. And I should have bought the vintage bottle. I just think it's cooler to have the older bottle. I didn't smell much of a difference between the two because this came out in 2021, and then literally like a year later they changed the bottle. But I like those old Opus Library Collection bottles that look a little different. You can go watch my review of Opus 9 I just did within the last week or so. But this is a very smoky, very earthy, woody. You get a little bit of funky Indian Assam oud in the top, but it's a very leathery, smoky affair. Lots of castoreum and stuff like that. Go watch my review. I think it was off of a sample, but I ended up getting a full bottle. And then just so I could show you something different, I easily could have picked my scent of the day as a Cypriol example, but wanted to show you something different. This is called Roja's Majestic Oud, and I reviewed this on the channel as well. This is discontinued, very hard to find. I really like this. It's the closest thing, I think, in just the way it wears to Roja's Haut Luxe. If you like, or Haut Luxe, excuse me, Haute Luxe. If you like Haute Luxe, check out Majestic Oud, but it is very, very hard to find because it's discontinued. I saw a bottle on eBay once for like $5,000. I was like, fuck you, dude. I hope nobody buys that bottle. But yes, I mean, I guess it is whatever someone's willing to pay for it. If there's some rich fucker out there willing to pay $5,000 for it, then whatever. I mean, it's worth what someone's willing to pay when it's discontinued like that. Okay, next we're going to talk about the category of Fougère. Now, Fougère is a masculine targeted category typically, and Fougères usually feature lavender, geranium, sometimes vetiver and oak moss, but tonka bean is the main bit. So lavender, geranium, tonka, or coumarin, if you will. And so Fougère category is one of the oldest fragrance category. Actually, the original Fougère, which is on this list. You can't have a Fougère list without listing this, I don't think. Just like I don't think it would be right to have a Chypre list without Mitsuko. That would just be incomplete. So this is called Fougère Royale, and Senator Eddie sent me this. I've been sitting on this decant for, feels like years, at least a year, maybe probably more like 18 or 20 months. But Fougère Royale is a 2010 remake of the original Fougère Royale, which was created by Paul Parquet in 1882. And so Roja Dove and Rodrigo Flores Roux kind of tag team, combined this to come up with like a modern version of Fougère Royale. And they use lots of herbs and stuff like that, lavenders, chamomile. It's a very well done creation. This is the X-Ray. I'll review this one of these days, but the original dates back to 1882, and it is actually claim to fame of Fougère Royale. Not only did it sort of create the family Fougère, but it also was the very first time that a fully synthetic coumarin is said to have been used in a fragrance. Okay, so sometimes, you know, you think about like a new vanillin extract when Emerald and Shalimar came out. Sometimes many new fragrances come about when a new ingredient is discovered or something like that, you know? And in this case, it was coumarin when it was synthesized. And so Paul Parquet used it in the first Fougère Royale. And so I'm going to show you some of my favorite Fougères, and many of them are in the 80s style. I like that style of vintage Fougère. If you know my taste, you could probably guess these two right out of the gate. But in 1988, Gucci put out a fragrance called Gucci Nobile. This is like a reference Fougère for men. And it does have tarragon in the top. I love the sharpness, the green, spicy sharpness of it. The geranium in the heart, of course, and interestingly enough, even though there's mosses, sandalwoods, ambers, cedar, patchouli, tonka bean, which is necessary, vetiver, and musk, there's a tobacco note that I pick up in here that's not listed in the note listing, and that tobacco-like note is beautiful. It reminds me a little bit of the way YSL's Jazz used tobacco, but Jazz goes more into the ambery parts. This is like a proper aromatic Fougère, as is this little bad boy called Sar by Van Cleef and Arpels. Everyone rapping now just got my Van Cleef on my wrist. Well, this is the Van Cleef I want. their perfume. Like the original Van Cleef & Arpels Pour Homme and SAR are both discontinued. These versions are discontinued. Rumor is they're bringing them back, but I'm sure from what I know about modern perfume companies redoing the classics, I'm sure I will be disappointed. Although I've never smelled it, so it's not fair to make an assumption like that. My guess is I'll think it's shite. But this is a beautiful spicy green, slightly soapy, because there's some neroli in the top of this one. But also there's an amplified note of pine in SAR, which you don't pick up as much in Gucci Nobile, to my nose anyways. But I love SAR. There's a little bit of castoreum in the base, a little bit more leather in here as well. But I'll review this one of these days. Soapy, leathery Fougère, 80s, just glory altogether. And finally, in my quest to show you something modern that you can buy that will give you an idea of the category we're talking about, again, I fall back on Rogue. Rogue Perfumery is a fantastic source of sort of going through these reference categories. And this one's called Bon Monsieur. Now, Bon Monsieur is basically a green aromatic fougère that was created in 2020, but smells like it was created in 1980. Okay, it smells like it was created in the 80s, the late 80s, like Nobile and SAR. It's got lavender absolute, oak moss, bergamot, carnation, musk, geranium, fir balsam, lily of the valley, patchouli, cedar, and sandalwood. So if you are not going to pay crazy money for Gucci Nobile or SAR, which I don't blame you, you don't have to. Honestly, my opinion would be go for something like this. Oh, honorary mention, because I can't talk about Fougère without mentioning this. This is called Bracken Man. I'm going to put this in on the fly because it deserves to be here. I'll add it to the list when I do my list in the description. But Bracken Man, you can see, is a Amouage that the Fishman stupidly discontinued because I think it's one of the best modern Fougères. These two are the best modern Fougères to me. 2016, 2020, okay? But Bracken Man is a clove-heavy take on Fougère. There's a ton of clove in here, but when it dries down to the most perfectly balanced, executed Fougère I've smelled in a long, long time. This was Olivier Cresp and Fabrice Pellegrin. And so Bracken Man, I mean, you can literally see the fern. And if you're not familiar with the story of the fern, Fougère means fern-like. So the idea was to create a fragrance that smelled like something that basically has no smell. I know some people will argue, no, ferns have smell, but basically they don't have a smell. Just like the camellia flower is a mute flower, which if you watched my Opus 9 review, you know the backstory of the camellia flower. The fern has no smell. So it was man's interpretation of what a fern would smell like. And very masculine, traditionally masculine perfumery. Okay, next ingredient on the list we have is frankincense. Now, frankincense or olibanum, one of my all-time favorite ingredients. I love frankincense and everything that it does. That's why Amouage is one of my favorite houses. But there's different ways of smelling frankincense is the thing. It can be sort of fresh and piney smelling and lemony when you smell the actual frankincense, tear or resin. It can be balsamic. It can be earthy. It can be smoky. If it actually feels like it's being burnt, it can be. It can give you the smoky feeling of kind of being in church. The priest walks by with that thing and, putting frankincense up in the air. And so for me, it's a powerful ingredient. It's a brilliant fixative. It's just absolutely beautiful. I love incense, frankincense in all its forms. And so I've highlighted some of what I would consider some reference frankincense fragrance. The first one I'm going to highlight is from 2002, and it's created by the great Bertrand Ducheffour, who's basically like the magician of frankincense, right? He is literally the magician. And he created this little bad boy from Comme des Garçons called Incense Avignon, a reference frankincense if there ever was one. It is sort of, I think, so what he's done is it is a slightly cold, churchy incense, but he's also mixed it with elemi. So it's frankincense and elemi. And elemi is almost like a more lemony, fresher version of frankincense. So has the LME. He's added cistus, which adds that labdanum-y, slightly sticky, resinous feeling with some vanilla, some patchouli, some Brazilian rosewood, and Roman chamomile. And the chamomile, Bertrand Duchaufour loves kind of throwing in these notes that are a little bit off the beaten path. So think of things like Timbuktu with the mango, or think of things like Zonka with that masala chai note, or those type of weird, even Jubilation 25 with that blackberry note, something a little off the beaten path. Here it's the chamomile, because everything is like smoky and crackling smoke in church and all this stuff, wood burning feeling, incense rising, slightly cold and aloof. And then all of a sudden there's this chamomile, which is almost like a comforting type smell for me. And it all comes together just to create a reference incense, like out and out reference incense for me. The other one that's a reference incense, which came out just a couple years later, and you can see how sometimes these fragrances are like bunched together. In my version of the favorite fragrances are bunched together in years, because like a trend comes and all of a sudden these houses start jumping on it. This was the very first Armani Privé fragrance from 2004. Whoever's running Armani stupidly discontinued. And guess who's running Armani? A L'Oreal. The killer of brands as far as I'm concerned. But this one's called Bois d'Encens. And Bois d'Encens is basically one of the best incense just soliflores I think I've ever smelled. It is peppery. It does have some vetiver in here. If you really wait late into the dry down, which is like 2 hours in the future for this one, because it does not last long, you start to get some labdanum ambery touches. But Michel Almerac created this, and the idea was to literally recreate the smell of church incense, a Catholic church incense. That's what Giorgio Armani wanted. He wanted to be brought back to being a kid sitting in the pew at a Catholic mass kind of thing. And there's an issue with incense fragrances in that the more realistic the smell, the less it lasts, the weaker the longevity, right? So what Armani did is they decided to go down the route of just almost realism, but they sacrificed longevity, because you don't get some of those more modern materials that make it last longer on your skin. So when you spray this, I mean, you have about 30 or 45 minutes, let's call it an hour, of just the most beautifully intense, perfect incense fragrance. And then it just kind of flies off. It disappears. When I wear this, every like 2 hours I'm reapplying, because I love the opening so much, it just doesn't last. And for some people, the kind of money they're asking for an Armani Privé fragrance is a tall ask, and maybe that's why it got discontinued. I think it's a stupid move to discontinue one of what I would consider the reference frankincense. The other ones you could go for would be Healy's Cardinal, which is maybe my least favorite from the list, although this is still really good. They used kind of like this linen. Imagine like you're smelling like a clean sheet, like a folded, put away clean sheet. Like almost like the Cardinal himself at a church just had his clothes washed, and there's still some remnants of the detergent / fabric softener on here. And then you add the peppery, cold frankincense with a little bit of myrrh, some ambergris in the base, and labdanum resins, a little bit of vetiver. Still a really, really well done. I mean, I'm comparing it with my all-time favorite incense fragrances, so, but yes, Cardinal is a reference incense. And then finally, probably my all-time favorite, because it balances the amount of time it lasts on my skin and realism. It's like a perfect balance for me. And this is Incense Extreme. Now, this is what the original Andy Tower bottles look like before he went to his new modern bottle, which we'll talk about here in either the next or the one after. But Incense Extreme, for me, you can really smell Andy Tower's like fingerprints in this. The way he uses that ambergris accord, which I always assumed was not real ambergris. I think it's an accord he created. I've never smelled an ambergris, a real ambergris smell like the way he does ambergris. But it's spicy, it's woody, it's a little bit green, a little bit herbal. It's got coriander and petitgrain, which is like the sticks and twigs of the orange blossom tree, frankincense, and one of the most amazing combinations for me, and one of the reasons why I think it's my favorite, is this note of iris that he put in here. So imagine his beautiful ambergris, frankincense in all of its glory, green, spicy, cold. You think of that wispy sort of incense, lemony, fresh, and then you blend it with iris, which just feels so posh, Yes, it's extreme because this does last a long time on my skin. For a realistic smelling frankincense, this lasts a long time. But when you blend that iris with it, man, this is like numero uno for me. Although Incense Avignon gives it a run for its money. Those two, Bois d'Encens I love, but reapplying every 45 minutes is kind of shite. Okay, next on the list, we're going to talk about ginger. So ginger in perfumery kind of gives us warm, spicy, sort of, I would call it like a zing, like if you eat sushi or something and you eat the ginger afterwards, you get that zing, that explosion of flavor in your mouth. That's kind of what ginger does. I've grabbed two. They're both, Tom Ford had a hand in both. The first one is called Gucci Envy. It was actually created when Tom Ford was the in-house creative director of Gucci in 1998. One of my favorite designer fragrances of all time. I think this stuff is just stunning. It's spicy, it's woody. It's got this peppery rosewood with the ginger in the top, sandalwood, carnation, rose, jasmine, leather, patchouli, vanilla, and vetiver. Jean Guichard, who, of the Guichards, Aurélien Guichard, who he's kind of the new age, that's his son, and Jean Guichard, give me the old man any day of the week. Jean knew how to make a fragrance. Aurélien has the most badass name. I love that name, by the way, Aurélien, named after a badass Roman emperor. But he did not know how to make fragrances like his dad. His dad did the original Obsession for women, La Nuit by Paco Rabanne, which is one of my favorite feminine fragrances from the 80s. Gucci Envy. I mean, his old man had some serious... Oh, Poison. He was on the creation of the original Poison along with Edward Fleischier, who is an all-star in his own right. The original Parfum de Peau by Montana. I mean, the guy had his hand in a lot of things, but this is probably his best like designer for men creation, and I really like what they did here. The Carnation gives it a little bit of that old school, but the ginger just gives it that green. It's perfect, that zinginess, and you actually smell a little bit of it. Rich Mitch just reviewed this fragrance. This is the other reference ginger I'm gonna talk about. It's called Tom Ford for Men. This is discontinued, unfortunately, just like Gucci Envy for Men. And the thing about this is that the ginger in the top of both, I think, will remind you of each other if you focus on that ginger note, but I don't see much else comparison at all. Like, for me, Gucci Envy is a completely different fragrance from Tom Ford for Men, but they both use ginger in a very similar way in the top. That's why I both put them in here. And this is beautiful kind of citruses, freshness. It is woody and spicy. I mean, this has Cypriol and tobacco, but it wears very light. If you like fresher tobacco fragrances like Dolce & Gabbana Pour Homme and all that stuff, then this is sort of, I think, a fragrance you should try to hunt down. It's a great balance of freshness and, heavier ingredients that don't wear heavy. And the ginger in the top, sometimes it can come across as candied. Sometimes it can come across as fresh. I really think Tom Ford is stupid for discontinuing this, along with the original Extreme, which came in the same bottle. I'll review them one of these days, but I think those are two reference ginger fragrances. Okay, next on the list, we're going to talk about Immortelle, which some people fear because it can be known as the curry plant and all this other stuff. But it almost has this straw-like, imagine the feeling of dry straw from outside, like hay-like straw, brittle and honeyed feeling. Some say it can have this tea-like aspect to it, but always think about the color like brown, like fall. Immortelle is perfect for fall for me. And there's one fragrance that came out in 1985 that gets almost no love. It's a spicy, woody reference Immortelle fragrance for me. It's called Sables. This is the older Annick Goutal. They now changed their name to just Goutal, but spicy, woody, earthy. Corsican Immortelle is used here with amber, and it's beautiful. It is still being marketed, but it's in the new bottles now. I've never smelled the new stuff, but I can tell you this is from 1985, a vintage fragrance that does not get much love as far as like vintage love goes, but it is all the way back from 1985. And then I reviewed a fragrance from the house of Histoire de Parfum called 1740. And 1740 is, I think, one of the most underrated leathers. It's got Divana. It smells like almost a Bertrand Duchefort because of the Divana and all that stuff, but it's not. At least I don't think it is. It actually lists Gerard Guislain as the creative director. Oh, Sylvie Jordet is the perfumer, excuse me. But as far as leather and Immortelle blend, I don't know if you can do much better than this. This is such an underrated fragrance, even among the fragrance community. 1740 is very underrated. Spicy, leathery, vintage in style. Go watch my review of 1740 if you want kind of an in-depth discussion on it. But this is like Immortelle heaven for me. And then two others. The next one comes out in 2012. So Sables came out in 85. 1740 came out in 2008. Now we're going to go to 2012 from Atelier d'Orange. This is The Afternoon of a Faun by Ralph Schwieger, who, this is kind of a green Chypre construction with this Immortelle note, with this Myrrh note, and with this beautifully sort of prominent rose. I get a lot of rose in here with some, imagine like a spicy incensey rose, if you will, with the myrrh, the resins, iris, leather, pepper, and the Immortelle, which, you know, the color of the juice is like a perfect representation of what Immortelle smells like. That straw, honey-like sort of floral that can come off to some as smelling like curry. But, you know, I don't think that's fair a lot of times. But it is known as the curry plant to some. But I don't get that aspect of it here. But Afternoon of a Faun, and finally, probably my favorite Immortelle fragrance. This also could have been on my boozy fragrance list. Again, you can't put everything everywhere, but this has this amazing boozy orange brandy mixing with everlasting flower and lavender. It's the reason I never bought a bottle of Eau Noir. Although now looking back on it, I want a vintage bottle of Eau Noir with the green juice, but and this is discontinued too, by the way. Amouage absolutely fucked the pooch on this one. This is called Sunshine Man. I cannot believe they discontinued this. This is, I would almost say, a masterpiece. It is so good. Fuck me. I love this stuff, man. It has this candied orange brandy with lavender and everlasting flower in the top with clary sage, juniper berry, bergamot, vanilla, tonka bean, and cedar wood. It's so unique and different. The only thing I've ever smelled that smells like this is Eau Noir. But Eau Noir smells much, how would you describe? Maybe like much more spicy, you know, like there was more kitchen spices in Eau Noir, whereas this kind of goes in a little bit of a different direction. Man, I love this stuff so much. I absolutely love Sunshine Man. It's one of the few Amouages I have not reviewed, and you can see the dent. I've worn the piss out of this, and I love Sunshine Man. And I'm pissed they discontinued it. Okay, next on the list, we're going to talk about Juniper berries. Now, Juniper berries have a bit of this sappy, sort of like a little bit bitter sort of freshness to them. Imagine like a powerful burst of freshness, right? But if you can imagine, juniper berries are used to freshen up gin. So you think about gin, think about pouring like a can of Sprite. And I say Sprite specifically, so you're imagining clear soda, not brown. Don't think about Coca-Cola. Think of something clear, or tonic water. Think of tonic water with its sort of bubbles after you pour it and stuff like that. The fizziness. Excuse me. That's what's kind of... that's what juniper berries add, this freshness to it. And I'm going to review a Creed fragrance very soon, hopefully before the end of the summer, called Royal Water. That to me, like if you said, Ramsey, I want one reference juniper berry fragrance, what would it be? This is my second bottle, by the way, and you can see the dent. And I used up an entire first one. I've got it for proof. I'll show you guys, since some of you think I'm bullshitting. I have an entire silver Royal Water bottle that I ran through, bought another one. They're both 2015 batches, by the way. The first one I had, though, was the Fire Hose Atomizer. The second one is when they changed to the newer atomizers. So I actually have two bottles from the same year, where one was before the switch over and one was right after. Crazy. But this is just perfect representation of Juniper. And it does what Creed does so well, you know? It has this peppery freshness to it. So there's bergamot, lemon, mandarin orange, clementine, and peppermint, along with that juniper berry. And it just fizzes with freshness. This is perfect for a green day. Perfect for a hot day. Like when it's 100 degrees in Texas, I love wearing this stuff because it's fresh, it's citrusy, and it just, I mean, it bounces off of you, I feel like, and projects freshness and coolness, but not in like a modern sort of way. There's something a little vintage about this. Some people compare it to some of the really old school Chypres for men, like Pour Monsieur by Chanel, or Capucci Pour Homme, or something like that. I don't know if I would go that far. I've heard Eau de Sude as a comparison. I've never smelled it, but I could, from what I hear about Eau de Sude, I could see maybe something like that. But very, very clean, classy, gentlemanly wear for the heat. And even the clear kind of label gives you that. Now, I'm going to show you one more juniper berry as a reference, but I want to show you the color of this one just as much as the smell. It is a reference juniper berry to me, because it also represents like the aromatic aspects of it. And there's a beautiful rosemary. I think it's rosemary and juniper tag teaming the opening that is giving me this feeling. But this is Gucci Guilty Cologne Pour Homme. Discontinued. Alberto Morias made this. And it does go white musky into the dry down, generic white musky, although I still like it. Lots of heliotropin and white musk and stuff like that. But the opening with the rosemary and juniper berries, so aromatic and fresh and oily and just bursting with freshness, you know. And the color is a perfect juniper berry color. If you can imagine, that's what juniper berries smell like to me. Okay, next on the list we have myrrh. Now, myrrh is resinous. It can be liqueur. It can be licorice-like kind of earthiness, you know. There's definitely this bitter, resinous, earthy feel to myrrh. And I've done many videos on myrrh. I've got this is not a top 10 myrrh, where we talk really about the gum resin itself and all that good stuff. And so I would consider 3 perfect myrrh fragrances for this. So the first one is going to be Lone Star Memories. And here I'm going to show you the new Andy Tower bottles. For those of you who have not seen the new ones, well, everyone's seen them. I don't know what I'm talking about. But if you're new to the hobby and you were like, man, I've never seen an Andy Tower, or you've never seen an Andy Tower bottle like this, and I was trying to describe the new one. That's his current famous bottle, the Pentagon bottle. But this is Lone Star Memories. So Lone Star Memories is my favorite tower, period. Most people love LDDM and all that stuff, and I do. I love Le Desert Marocain. I love the X-Ray version of it, but this is, I think, his masterpiece for me, because it touches all of the parts that make a fragrance perfect for what I look for. It tells a beautiful story. It's a huge fragrance. You know, you can almost feel like you're there as the story is progressing. And I'll do a full review of this one of these days, but there's carrot seed, clary sage, green geranium, leather, cistus, jasmine, vetiver, myrrh, sandalwood, and tonka. And that myrrh in here is so realistic and just beautiful. I love the earthy, resinous feeling. It almost, I often said it almost feels like something like bubbling in a cauldron, or like a coffee pot left on for too long, where it burned the bottom of the coffee. That's how the myrrh feels in here. Very dark, very earthy, beautiful stuff. I love the resinous aspect of myrrh. The other one, which this could also be like one of my favorite vetiver fragrances as well, but it's a Parfum flanker of the original Eau Sauvage, but you have to get the 2012 version because they replaced the myrrh in the 2017 version with Elemi. And this is, I mean, to me, I think this is some of Francois Demachy's best work. This is Eau Sauvage Parfum, which it's spicy, woody, Calabrian bergamot, Somalian myrrh, and Haitian vetiver. And again, if you want to talk about color of perfume, like I mentioned, this is the color of juniper berries. This is a perfect color of myrrh. Look how it almost looks kind of murky. That's how myrrh smells. It smells very gummy and earthy, and I just love it. Oh, it's so good. The Somalian myrrh and Haitian vetiver and Calabrian bergamot all smell so high quality in this. I really liked what Dore did with some of these Parfum versions. Now, let's talk a little bit about probably the reference myrrh fragrance for me. Actually, I said 3. There's 4. And there's a full review of this, of all 3 of these. Or am I losing my mind? We only did 2. I'm losing my mind. Okay, so this is the 3rd one. So this is the reference myrrh for me. Like if you were like, Ramsey, I want to buy one fragrance that just encapsulates myrrh, right? Give me the reference of the reference. What would it be? It would be this. It would be Oriental Velours by Les Indemodables. And actually, from what I've smelled so far, I don't own a single Les Indemodables. They're all in these decants that I got. And so if you came to me and said, Ramsey, I'm going to give you one Les Indemodables fragrance, it would be this. This is everything. And it also uses Somalian myrrh, but this is so perfectly resinous, so bitter. The myrrh in here is so beautifully bitter. And there's vanilla in here, which is crazy. But it's myrrh and spruce, and that combination is to die for, man. And there's vetiver in here. So, you know, it shares some things with Eau Sauvage Parfum. But this is special stuff. This came out in 2016. This is one of the few Les Indemodables that was done before Antoine Lee kind of took over as in-house perfumer. Florence Foulet is the perfumer of Oriental Velours. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Oppoponax, which is the next one on the list. Oppoponax has more of like a soft, like a luminous feeling to it, but it is known as sweet myrrh. Okay, so there's something on Fragrantica that says the olfactory difference between myrrh and Oppoponax is the vegetable soup-like, slightly animalic sweet odor of Oppoponax, compared with the medicinal, sharp freshness of myrrh oil. So apparently, vegetable soup is how they're describing Oppoponax. I don't know if I would ever describe it like that. I've heard crushed ivy leaves. I've heard all kind of things like that. I've never heard vegetable soup, but it definitely is. Oppoponax is, I think of it as sweet myrrh, okay? So the fragrance that instantly came to mind, and again, if you want like a reference, Oppoponax fragrance for me, this is it. It's Interlude Man by Amouage. I have the original snap cap version. Even the newer one with the, magnetic cap lasts forever on me. This is one of the most creative, spicy, smoky first. Actually, smoky then spicy, because this feels like you're in a opium tent back in the day, and smoke is rising. People are smoking, and incense is burning. The way the Oppoponax mixed with the cistus and ambers and everything comes together is just intoxicating. I mean, it's really intoxicating. Interlude is chaotic. It will challenge you, and you will never have smelled anything like this. It is really something special. So then I just want to highlight a couple others, because I really like Oppoponax and Oud. And one that I did not highlight in my favorite ouds, although I easily could have. I highlighted Russian oud instead. But honestly, this could have been highlighted in that oud reference from the last video I did. But this is called Oud Zen. But the reason I'm highlighting it now is that it dries down to this, the most beautiful, I mean, just perfect representation of this lava-like Oppoponax. Imagine like this lava running downhill and hardening, and having a lot of the elements of myrrh, but slightly sweeter. Oh, and there's also some balsams in here, but man, if you're a fan of resinous fragrances, if you ever get a chance to smell Oud Zen, or Oud Zen, Z-H-E-N, the remake that he did, I would highly recommend it. I am a huge fan, and actually, after I got my full bottles of Malik Al Taif, this very well could be on the full bottle list one of these days. But Oud Zen. And also I want to highlight a Bortnikoff, because if you're a fan of the sort of oriental style fragrances where things like Myrrhs and Oppoponax are highlighted, I would urge you to smell this. This is Mysterious Oud. This is, to me, like you took that sort of oriental DNA, right, with lots of, there's actually an amber attar accord in here called Amber Shimama, which is a very famous attar accord. And imagine mixing the ambers with things like labdanums, vanillas, Oppoponax, Tolu balsams, and then oud and rose. So it's a much more ambery version of an oud. But Mysterious Oud, there's a full review on the channel. You can check it out. And so that takes care of Oppoponax. Okay, next on the list, we are going to talk about my favorite sport fragrances, reference sport fragrances. So for summer, I'm going to highlight 3. They came out in 85, 86, 87. They're all discontinued, okay? You can find them. You're going to have to hunt for these, though. But I love the way they did sport fragrances back in the day. One is Antaeus Sport. And Antaeus Sport, most people don't even realize there was an Antaeus Sport. I thought it only was out for a year or two. It actually turned out it was out for like 5 or 6 years, from 85 to 91 or 92. And it's bergamot, lemon, artemisia, peppermint, pimento. So they added some things in here, like peppermint, rose, pepper, mace, jasmine, leather, vetiver, sandalwood, patchouli, and oak moss. I have a comparison video on the channel between the cologne, the sport cologne, and the original Antaeus. I have a comparison video. You can check that out. And then one I just wore within the last week, as my scent of the day, Kouros Eau de Sport, my favorite Kouros flanker I've ever come across. Eau de Sport is a little bit more aromatic Kouros. Imagine you took Kouros, the old school Charles of the Ritz Kouros, okay? So imagine you took the vintage Kouros and added this slightly green, woody, maybe a little bit earthy artemisia note with some herbs. You know, it's like a little bit of an herb salad in the top, and some galbanum. So it becomes a little more greener, a little more outdoorsy, but then it just is Kouros. I mean, it feels like you're wearing vintage Kouros. The original advertisement was fantastic. This guy in this, tight polo, reaching up to the sky, grabbing the bottle of Kouros Eau de Sport with the blue sky behind him. Legendary stuff. I'll review it one of these days. And then this one deserves to be on this list, although I think Antaeus Sport and Kouros Eau de Sport are my 2 favorites. This was 85 and 86, by the way. Now we go to 87, so don't feel ashamed to be 3rd place here, boss. But this is Boss Sport. And Boss Sport is a beautiful, spicy, fresh take on like a vintage Fougère. It's got geranium. It's got all the Fougère makings. It's got juniper in the top. It's got marigold, which has a little bit of this crinkly, it has features of Immortelle with that crinkly straw feeling to it, with mugwort, rose, jasmine, lily, cedar, patchouli, amber, moss, musk, sandalwood, and tonka bean. Very traditionally masculine fragrance with some floral, fresher bits in here. Doesn't matter which version of this you can get. Red cap, black cap, whatever you can find, get it. They're all amazing from my understanding. Okay, next on the list, we're going to talk about Suede. Now, I've done it. This is not a top 10 Suede, but Suede basically adds this velvety, leathery, slight type touch, Think of velvet when you think of Suede. So there's a handful of fragrances I want to highlight. Some of these have full reviews, like, for example, this one, Anubis, one of my favorite Papillon fragrances, and I just reviewed her newest fragrance called Epona on the channel. I would urge you to check that out. But this is one of my favorite representations of Suede and labdanums and sort of leathery, smoky aspects in here. There's also Immortelle in here. Go watch my full review. I really poured my heart and soul into that review because this fragrance is very special. There's a fabulous pink lotus note in here. It's just an amazing, but the Suede note is to die for. The other Suede that I want to review is discontinued, unfortunately. It's Gianfranco Ferre Pontacchio 21. You can see almost this, it looks like a cheap leather cover because that's what it is, but I think it's supposed to be the Suede-like feeling. Woody, spicy, There's cardamom and rosemary, and the suede is in the base with the angelica and the myrrh, and that's my favorite part of this fragrance, the dry down. The angelica, the myrrh, just come together to create something amazing with the suede. Very classy stuff. Big fan of Pontaccio 21. And then a fragrance that easily could have been on my patchouli reference video, but it wasn't, so I'm able to use it here. This is Monsieur by Frederic Malle, the first Frederic Malle that came out after Estee Lauder purchased them. And Bruno Jovanovic, who's a very heavy-handed perfumer, made this, so this has an unusually large amount of patchouli, like 50% high concentration of patchouli. But it's mixed with frankincense, rum, orange, mandarin orange, and suede. And that suedey saffron with the very scratchy, hard, vintage-style patchouli, very earthy. But with the suede, oh my God, it's so good in the cold. Like if you're looking for a true cold weather, patchouli, suede, frankincense, boozy because of the rum, very modern still. Although many old school touches, it still feels modern because of the way it's all put together. Monsieur, period. That's it. No further discussion on the matter. Okay, next on the list we have a fragrance that used to be called Tom of Finland. It is now called Clean Suede. Literally has the name suede in it. So it's aldehydes, lemon, birch leaf, pine, pepper, suede, ambergris, and vanilla. Antoine Lee is the perfumer. And so they've remarketed it. I haven't smelled the new Clean Suede version, although I'm sure Atat Libre d'Orange does good reformulations, if it is reformulated at all. But yeah, Antoine Lee, if you're a fan of his work, I would urge you to check this out. There is a little bit of this lemon meringue pie feeling in the top. It's a little strange, the way the aldehydes and the lemon come together. But if you let it dry down, you'll really like the suede dry down. Okay, next on the list, we're going to talk about Styrax. Now, Styrax is one of those fragrances or fragrance ingredients that can smell slightly floral, slightly dry. It can be a little bit vanillic. It can have a little human skin feel to it. But I always think of it as being slightly waxy, like leathery, waxy, slightly animalic. Some ingredient houses call it liquid amber, which I think is a little bit of a misnomer because I don't think it smells like proper amber. You know, it doesn't smell like amber or like a cord that a perfumer would create for amber. But it can have these dry, floral, woody elements to it, and it can have this sort of waxy. I think it's a balsam, like it's a balsamic oleoresin. Okay. And so I grabbed a handful here, a couple of fragrances to represent Styrax. The first is called Prada's Queer Styrax, and this niche line, this is what the niche line of Prada looks like, is very underrated. I'll review this one of these days, but this is a beautiful powdery take on frankincense. So it came out in 2011, but it's like frankincense with the waxy, leathery Styrax. And there's a little bit of vanilla in here, but the powdery elements mixing with everything are just beautiful. Powdery and resinous. I'll review it. That Prada line deserves more love. And then one I have reviewed from a house that deserves all of the love, and I'm going to have Liz Moores back on the channel one of these days, is called Salome. Salome is just a brilliant creation. Her interpretation of sex on the skin with Hyraceum, Carnation, Jasmine, Orange Blossom, Oak Moss, Patchouli, Bitter Orange, Turkish Rose, Bergamot, and Styrax. So Salome is a very animalic. Oh, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Okay, next we're going to move on to the note of tea. Now, tea is a note that can go in a lot of different directions because there's all different types of teas is the issue. You know, it can be sort of astringent. It can be malty to some people. It can be relaxing. If it's chamomile tea or you know, black tea, can smell musty. It can all kind of different ways people can describe it. Floral, fruity. I mean, I've heard people describe it as vegetable or marine. I mean, there's all different types of teas. And so for me, I highlighted some of my favorites just in the regular tea form, and then I grabbed one more just to give you an example of like a green tea fragrance that I think is a reference green tea. So first, we're going to talk about a discontinued fragrance from the house of Gucci, probably one of the best from Gucci, along with, well, I reviewed the original Gucci Pour Homme. This is coming up for review soon. It's called Gucci Pour Homme 2, which was done by Karine Dubreuil-Serini, and this is like, if you like fresh style fragrances, you know, if you like the way, this is also a 2007, but if you like the way these fresher type fragrances wear, this is one to look into, because it has this beautiful violet leaf, but nothing like the violet leaf in Fahrenheit. It doesn't have that barrel accord or whatever they call it, but it does have the sort of ozonic space that the violet leaf adds here, with the most perfect note of black tea. It's black tea, but it's mixed with cinnamon, tobacco, myrrh, olive wood, white musk, and it just has this sort of freshness to it. With all these heavy ingredients, it smells fresh. Very similar to the way I said Tom Ford for Men from the same year, 2007. Has a lot of heavy ingredients, but it wears fresh. It was obviously kind of a thing that was going on, a trend in 2007. And but the way that the tea, I mean, it's almost literally like if you had like a tin of tea and you just stuck your head in the tin of tea, you know, and just imagine freshening it up with all these other notes. That's how Gucci Pour Homme 2 smells to me. It's so beautiful. I'll review this one of these days. But my all-time favorite tea fragrance, and you can go watch my ranked. I did a rank. This is not a top 10 tea fragrances, but Gucci Pour Homme 2 came out in 2007. This one came out in 2008. So 1 year later, tea is trending. And we've got 5 o'clock Eau Gingembre. I love this so much, I backed it up. 5 o'clock Eau Gingembre is bergamot, candied ginger, honey, patchouli, pepper, dark cacao, and that tea note. It's supposed to smell like tea and biscuits. 5 o'clock, referencing the tea time in England. This is the most and you know what? I was so shocked by how well the patchouli is done here. I don't know why, because with Bordeaux 1834, with so many of these different fragrances that Serge Lutens put out that have that tea, that have that patchouli note, I'm always shocked by how well it's done, and I shouldn't be. The patchouli in here is to die for, along with that tea note. It is stunning. I'll do a full review one of these days. And then one fragrance that I have done a full review on the channel that has an amazing tea note is Epic Woman. If you can imagine taking the tea note from Silver Mountain Water, which easily could have been on this list as well. But my bottle is not at 100%. I think it's still okay if I wait after I spray it, but the top notes have really kind of turned a little bit. But imagine taking the tea note from Silver Mountain Water and wrapping it in an Amouage wrapper with Arabian style, like rose, cumin, frankincense, amber, oud, all this stuff. I really do think this is the best Cécile Zarokian fragrance. One of her earliest fragrances, but she had help. Danielle Modial and Angeline Leporini helped her, and I really think those two really helped her. Although she gets the credit, I think those two really, really helped her a lot. God, what a creation. And that tea note wrapped in all of this Arabian-style perfumery, this spicy oriental, is unbelievable. And when it hits, you know, it hits a couple hours in and you really start smelling this tea that smells like Silver Mountain Water's tea. It's unbelievable. Okay, let me show you the green tea fragrance I pulled out. And so this one's called Sherwood Gentleman. Whenever I did my ambergris video, I realized that I did not include, oh man, I'm going to have to pull it up, because I am, Ambrosia. I forgot to include Ambrosia. Ambrosia easily could have been included in that ambergris video. Instead, I referenced the first version of this video that I did where I talked about ambergris. I included Pheromone Pour Homme by La Via del Profumo, Ombre Supreme, and Atlantic Ambergris. 3 that you can't go wrong with, but there probably should have been Ambrosia in there as well. So this is a little bit of an olive branch making that up. So this is Gentleman. It is sold out though. So, I mean, he does have a new fragrance that's going to be coming out very soon called Poseidon, which I can't wait for. It's kind of like a hardcore animalic ambergris, aquatic style, but I'm sure with all the ambergris, it's going to smell like no aquatic you've ever smelled. And so Sherwood is a house that kind of follows in the footsteps of Areej Dore, using, you know, real ingredients. The note listing is as long as a Roja in this, but the key takeaway is the green tea note. One of the best green tea notes I've smelled, and it is very gentlemanly, perfect for the office. I called this a freshie and someone laughed, but it's like this type of perfumery's version of a freshie, you know. So there's the entire note listing if you want to pause it and have at it. But I've been very, very impressed with this house. So very, very impressed. Can't wait to smell Poseidon. Okay, next on the list we have tobacco. And tobacco is one of my favorite notes in perfumery. You know, it depends on whether you're smelling fresh green tobacco leaves or the cured leaves that smell more sort of hay-like. Imagine like you're smelling hay. And, you know, earthy hay. The dried leaves are just beautiful. And woody and earthy, and just, I love the smell of tobacco. Tobacco is one of my favorite notes. So the first one I'm going to show you is from 2001. And it is called Chergui. I love Chergui. Again, I backed it up. Serres Luton is one of those houses you just never want to be without. One of your all-time loves. It's hay, iris, rose, honey, musk, incense, tobacco, amber, sandalwood. And that iris with the incense and the hay. Oh man, this is fall in a bottle for me. I love this stuff. I'm going to do a full review one of these days. But Chergui, the other one of my favorite tobaccos is from the house of Bortnikoff. Actually, if I could add one tobacco fragrance to my repertoire, this would be it. It would be Tabak Dore by Bortnikoff. I've reviewed it on the channel. You can check it out. I got a decant somewhere. But probably one of the most specific tobacco absolute, probably the deepest tobacco absolute, like a fragrance that just smells like all of the intricacies of tobacco absolute, because tobacco absolute is one of the most deep and you know, ingredients that just has so much richness and depth. You know, someone said it has like 300 different smells, right? So it can smell fruity, it can smell vanillic, it can smell spicy, it can all these different things, you know. Like imagine the inside of a humidor going into a cigar shop or something, the leaf of the tobacco, the green side of the tobacco. There's so many different versions of it, and Tabak Dore highlights that beautifully. Go watch my review. But a couple other tobaccos I want to highlight that I actually have. One is Tom Ford's Tobacco Oud, which you know, you can still buy from my Actually, I'm sorry. Tobacco Oud is officially discontinued now, according to Parfumo. It was last marketed by Estee Lauder. So I heard they did away with the 100 ml bottles, which I knew that was a bad sign. But apparently, it is gone. It is discontinued. So tobacco, oud, patchouli, and sandalwood with a little bit of this like whiskey type accord. And I think an amber accord that really reminds a little bit of Amber Absolute. But I love tobacco oud. Huge fan. And then we've got two more. One's discontinued, and then we have the modern, which is a rogue perfumery again. But probably right now, if you twisted my arm and said, Ramsey, what's your favorite tobacco in your collection that I've been wearing? These two are going to go head to head. And I wore this to bed recently the other night, and my God, man, I was just shaking my head. What a fragrance they have here. So this one's called Aramis Tobacco Reserve. And I can't believe they discontinued. I mean, just Estee Lauder just really, again, fuck the pooch on this one. Oh man, the tobacco leaf. It is slightly sweetened from tonka bean, but not too much, you know. There's a little bit of that hay-like feeling. But sometimes you don't want a super sweet tobacco, you know. And here it's a fruity tobacco because it's using blackcurrant, and it's an expensive smelling tobacco because of the iris. And again, I mentioned iris with Incense Extreme. Here, the iris just makes it smell so much more expensive than it really is. It's spicy. You get the smoky side of it. It's just, to me, it's absolutely unbelievable. And the one I'm going to show you that I think if you want a tobacco that highlights some of the greener aspects of tobacco, but still highlights, I would say, what a tobacco fragrance is all about, this is what I would recommend you get. This is Rogue's Tabak Vert. Tabak Vert is shockingly good, and oh my God, you know, it smells like how I would imagine a tobacco fragrance from 100 years ago to smell, you know? It smells vintage in nature. So many of his fragrances do. It's got tobacco, cedar, musk ketone, oak moss, bergamot, amber, pepper, and sandalwood. And the vert side of things, because it smells like such a green tobacco, and yet it's almost like there's this transition that happens where you get the brown, dark, highly cured tobacco leaf, and then, but sometimes when you smell, especially early on, you get the green sort of, you know, imagine like the tobacco leaf alive before it's uncured. You get both elements of it. It's almost like you're getting both the green and the brown mixed together. So reference tobacco for me. Okay, coming to the end, last one is Ylang-Ylang. Sadly, the last note in our reference episode part 2 is Ylang-Ylang. Ylang-Ylang is kind of this sort of buttery floral. It can smell custardy. It can smell, I like to think of it as like elastic, very bright, soft floral. And I've heard people describe it as slightly fruity as well, a little apricot-y. And so slightly heady floral sometimes, slightly powdery as well. And so the Ylang-Ylang fragrances I'm going to highlight, the first one is one that doesn't get anywhere near enough talk. It was done by 2 all-star perfumers, Dominique Ropion and Jean-Louis Suizac. And this is called Kenzo's Jungle, the Elephant. Now, this is a vintage bottle before, I don't know if this was before Kenzo was owned by LVMH or what, but this is cardamom, clove, patchouli, vanilla, heliotrope, licorice, ylang, gardenia, mandarin orange, and mango. So this is very oriental. You get a lot of like vanillas and stuff like that. But the Ylang-Ylang note, when it comes through, the floral side is so beautiful. And I think the mango like heightens the Ylang-Ylang somehow in here. But you know, it's got that sort of Play-Doh like feel to the oriental. Like it's very malleable. But I mean, Jean-Louis Suizac, you should own everything Jean-Louis Suizac has done if you're a hardcore frag head, in my opinion. The guy is just on the Mount Rushmore of perfume as far as I'm concerned. And then we've got this little bad boy, which came out in 2013. This version is discontinued. They re-released a new one, I think last year, for the 10-year anniversary. I have not smelled the new version, so I don't know what that smells like, but you can technically still buy this, and it's Millésime 1849. There's a full review on the channel. You can check it out, but this smells a lot like Royal Oud with a big, huge Ylang-Ylang note in here. So, you know, Royal Oud is known as Royal Cedar to some as a joke because there's such a huge cedar note in it, and you definitely get this cedar front and center with the sandalwood and that oud accord, if you will. And just imagine it kind of amped up by these powdery Ylang-Ylang. Powdery Ylang-Ylang. I grew to like it because this is the second bottle of this that I had. So I actually had a bottle. This is a 2015 bottle. I had a 2013 bottle before this and used the whole thing. Bought the fragrance again, and the guy was like, maybe you should get the 2015 so for freshness sakes. And I was like, fine. I should have got the 2013, but I got the 2015. I'm happy with both. But I really have a lot of memories wearing this because I wore the piss out of it. I mean, 75 ml, wore the whole thing, and then got another bottle. So yes, Millésime 1849, and then the last fragrance we're going to discuss today might shock you, but it's actually a Bortnikoff. And it is Musk Habib. Now, if you watch my review of Musk Habib, it won't shock you at all because Bortnikoff loves amping up a floral when he does his creations, okay? And in Musk Habib, what he did, obviously there's real deer musk in here, and you can go watch my full review. I went into a lot of detail in this review, but there is a Ylang-Ylang note in this that he amped up hardcore. And so if you want to smell an amazing yellow smelling, one of the most yellow smelling florals I've ever smelled here is this Ylang-Ylang. And by the way, this also could have been on the Cardamom, category because it's got that patented Bortnikoff Cardamom in the top. So many Bortnikoffs have that. But that's my reference video part 2. I hope you guys enjoy it. The time it takes to do these videos is astounding. Thank you for the support. I hope you learned something or at least put some more fragrances on your to sniff list. There will be a part 3 as well. I'm still working on compiling it, but there'll be a part 3, maybe even a part 4. You guys are liking these videos, so we'll see. But I'm just kind of, when I can get time, I have my daughter for the entire month of July. And so she's at Grandma and Grandpa's for a few days, so I'm getting a little bit of a rest. But I'll tell you what, whenever you spend a lot of time with kin, your family, I think spending time with my daughter has taught me more about myself than any book I could read, any course I could take, anything like that, you really learn more about yourself, and I'm loving our time together. So I haven't been able to do as many videos as quickly as I would like. I'm a very routine person, but I've been really enjoying the month of July with her. So as always, thank you for watching. Thanks for liking and subscribing and all the stuff you guys do. More videos to come, do not worry. So take care, everybody. Cheers, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.